like when they caught him sleeping in the office. Those were the things I brought up. And anything that I said was true. If there's one thing anyone who knows me knows about me is I am a straight shooter. I will tell you like it is. I don't sugarcoat, and it is what it is. Maybe he didn't like my delivery. Maybe it's, I don't know, because I wasn't a Scott DePace or a Doug Goodstein. He just took it a little harder when it came from me. I don't even know how to elaborate on it. It was bad. I think the hardest thing I ever saw, though, was the day that he got into that big fight with Teddy. And you can even see in the video me coming up the hall, because Teddy and I were very good friends at the time. Just took Teddy out of the building. We walked around for a while.
Hello and welcome to Here's the Pit. Tracey Millman is over there on my Zoom call. Hello, Tracey. I can't believe it.
Hello, Brad. Hello, everybody.
Tracey, the former office manager, right? I want to make sure I get the title correct, of the Howard Stern channels. Were you the Sirius or just the Howard Stern channels office manager?
Just the channels. Yeah. It was technically the operations manager of the channels, but office manager it is.
But tell us a little bit about, so you were there for a long time. People remember your voice. You yelled at Grillo, gave him some fun. That was kind of how we first got to hear from you. At some point, you get on-air experience. Was that something you even cared about? And it was the Grillo, right? That's the real first part time when we get to hear your voice. And Tim gives you a show. But before that, I'm sure Howard's like, oh my God, radio gold. Like listening to Tracey take down Grillo, the way you say his name, the way you say douche, I would like to hear a little bit of that if we can. Just give me some, but it was such a funny thing. I know. I'm sure it's like, oh God, why do I have to hear this? And you said that people still say this to you, but just tell me a little bit about that. What was it like? Did you enjoy? Did you want to be on the air? And when Tim approached you about doing a show, right? And that's when this all happens, where you become sort of a character?
I didn't actually know. So as everyone knows, it happened on the intern show. And when I came in the next day and Howard played it on the show, and I remember the biggest fan of that entire thing was Artie Lange. He went nuts for it. But it was very weird to me, because as much as that's when he was like, she's radio gold, I wasn't used to, and I'm still not, and I think this was one of the reasons also why I was just okay getting out of the industry. There are a lot of really shitty people out there who just want to bring you down and make you feel bad. And you really have to be strong to be able to put up with that stuff. And it was tough for me at first. Like, I really didn't like it, but I guess they had the conversation. They decided they wanted me to try happy hour, which I did. And it just kept going. And I was like, I don't want to put up with this shit. Not only do I feel like I'm saying things that I wouldn't normally say, and I'm taking down people that I normally wouldn't take down for what? And then I'm getting berated by people I don't even know for the same reason. I'm like, I don't want to do this. So after the Gary one, well, that was pretty bad. Gary didn't talk to me for like 3 months after that. It was really bad. I was like, this just isn't worth it. I mean, it amazes me that I'm gone for 7 years and there are still people out there that are total shitheads that feel like they have to say something negative to me. Like, I moved on. Maybe you should move on too. And maybe you should try some therapy. I don't know. That's all I'm going to say.
But it is hilarious stuff. I mean, not the things that people say to you, but the things you said. As I told you in our pre-interview, I still walk around the house going to my wife, douche. She's like, stop, just stop. But it's funny. But you mentioned the Gary thing. How hard was that? Because, you guys are tight and you have to work together. And now you're on a radio show and this is exactly what Howard wanted, right? So now you're trying to play.
I know what Howard wanted, but at the same time, I don't feel that I said anything that the Howard TV guys didn't say, like when they caught him sleeping in the office. Those were the things I brought up. And anything that I said was true. If there's one thing anyone who knows me knows about me is I am a straight shooter. I will tell you like it is. I don't sugarcoat shit, and it is what it is. Maybe he didn't like my delivery. Maybe it's, I don't know, because I wasn't a Scott DePace or a Doug Goodstein. He just took it a little harder when it came from me. But if I'm telling the truth and you don't like it, maybe you should look at the truth and not me,
Well, and you even said in this, and I'm sure, to me, thinking about like the world today, it was boys' club, right? And you're this spitfire, you're not going to take any shit. And I think, yeah, and I don't think Gary liked that. But how hard was that? I mean, you really were one of the. Robin was a staunch female, but she's on the air, and it's totally different. Back in that room, I can't imagine there's a lot of women back there giving it to Gary, and that's I think why it was. It was probably shocking to him that you were doing that, but also probably hurtful because he thinks everybody loves him. He needs everybody to love him, right?
Oh, don't get it twisted, though. I actually do love Gary, and I still to this day love Gary. He was always good to me. He was always sweet to me. I did something because I thought I was supposed to do it. Would I have done it in any other day or even thought about the things that I brought up on that show had I not really kind of been asked to? No. Absolutely not. You got to know your place. I mean, and I think in any other work environment, you do know your place. But here, it's so different. Like there, it was so different that you're expected to do things or to be a certain way. And I think it just gets the best of you a little bit. And you kind of just roll with what you think you're supposed to do, even if it's not something that you would normally do. I don't know if I'm describing it right. I don't know.
No, that's good. And that's what I was going to say is, did you ever say, listen, to Tim or to Gary, whoever, just, I don't really want to be on the air anymore. This was, I know it was kind of fun for you guys, but I don't need that anymore. Did that ever come up? And did they?
No, I did it in the studio with Howard. We had that conversation after the fight with Gary. Oh, hi, little dog.
Sparky, yeah.
I'm sorry. I get, I'm all doggy. After the second show, when I went in there and Gary and I had it out on the show, we decided that maybe this wasn't the best thing. And then, if you remember, I can't remember what the name of the show was, but Will, Jason, and Teddy did a similar show where they started to talk about everyone in the studio. And again, it led to the same problems. It led to the fights, which is great radio, but it became toxic in the office. Nobody wanted to talk to each other. Nobody trusted each other. And that didn't last that long either. I mean, this is one part of the show. This is one part of your job. So this is an hour. For the other 7 hours, now you hate everybody. Nobody wants to work like that.
I can't imagine it, actually. I mean, you ball bust, but then it's on the air and everyone else knows about it. That's why it's always interesting to me that and then Howard's kind of conducting it over here, enjoying it. He's like
Absolutely.
Turning.
It's like you sit there and it's like I remember I took Steve Brandano to go see the premiere for Iron Man. And I remember I was sitting on the bus coming into work and I had my little stiletto that I had gotten for Christmas, listening to the show. And Howard started to get angry. How come you've seen Iron Man and I haven't seen Iron Man? It was this whole big to-do and I freaked out so bad. And it's like you're constantly on guard because you constantly think something's going to get up, you're going to get in trouble, or something's going to make you get berated on air. And it's like I'm not having a conversation with 4 of my coworkers. I'm having a conversation with 25 million people. And it's creepy. I mean, it's creepy. And you're constantly on edge with everything you do because you never know what's going to come back in a good light, a bad light. And it's intense. It's intense.
But Benji is legitimately disgusting, right? Still, even today.
I don't even listen. I left that little bitch to do nothing but bark at me because he couldn't come to a comeback. So,
and he was the writer, and you would smoke him.
Yeah. And what does that say?
You mentioned Artie. I mean, he's super talented. Everyone knows it. But to get his impression of you, I mean, there's a person doing an impression of you. Did you love that? I mean, his impression was so great.
I loved it only because it was Artie. Because I love Artie. I've always loved Artie. Artie has always, and like I said, like even after everything went down and I was so uncomfortable and people were attacking me, and some weren't attacking me, some were really great about it. Artie was the one that I would go to when I had trouble with it, when I couldn't really grasp what was going on. Because before that, I was just the chick in the back office, and all of a sudden, and he would always be like, Tracey, don't worry about it. Like he would always just, and every once in a while I would even text him and he would just be like, you're gold. Like, fuck them. Don't worry about it. They're not your problem. Just ignore them. And he was really a good support. I don't even think he knows how much of a support he was.
How tough was that for you when he had his issues and then ultimately had to leave completely?
It was a bummer. It was a real bummer because he truly is one of the nicest, most generous people I've ever met in my entire life. And you never want to see somebody go down that path, but especially somebody who is so giving and nurturing and caring and just an all-around good person. And it broke my heart. It still breaks my heart to this day. Even like, you know, for everything that he's gone through and everything that went on with his nose. And like, I follow him on social media, and to see him now as to what I knew him at when I first got there, it's torturous. I mean, it's really torturous because he's just a doll.
Well, we hope he's doing well. I'm assuming, I always ask everyone, how's Artie if you talk to him? I'm assuming you are not in contact with Mr. Lange.
No.
That's too bad.
I think I reached out to him maybe 3 or 4 years ago on social media, but like in a DM, but that was it.
It's funny that because when I hear these conversations, I think of other things people have said, and everyone obviously has just glowing things to say about Artie. So the more I think about the fact that he did get to sleep or he would call in sick, if he was an asshole, you could just get rid of him. But it's impossible because he's such a good dude, and he's great on the show. So yeah. I'm starting to understand more that it was incredibly hard to just say, Artie, you can't come back anymore.
Yeah, it was a bummer. I mean, I don't even know how to elaborate on it. It was bad. I think the hardest thing I ever saw, though, was the day that he got into that big fight with Teddy. And you can even see in the video me coming up the hall, because Teddy and I were very good friends at the time. Just took Teddy out of the building. We walked around for a while, but I never saw like 4 to 5 men trying to hold back one man, and that man getting through. Like it, I mean, but now I think at the end of the day, we know it was drug induced and his adrenaline was going, and we had to get Teddy out of the building. And that, to me, was really heartbreaking to see him that way.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny and fun for a while, and then it did get, as a fan, just watching, like, oh, come on. It's just kind of, and part of you is like, Howard, don't you know what's going on? But it seemed like Howard really didn't know, or he found it funny. And that's the hardest part about all of it, I guess.
I don't know that it's looking back now, I can say that I saw all these things, or I knew what it was because now I know what it was. But back then, I don't really know that we all knew how bad it was. That boils down to. We knew there was something going on, but I don't think we knew the intensity of it.
Well, and that's what I can't remember who said it here, but they said, addicts know addicts, so they obviously know what's going on. Howard's not an addict. Fred's not. Robin. So none of you, all you people are like not really in the Artie Lange show business, drug, John Belushi world, so you would have no idea. You just think, oh, he must have had too many drinks last night, or maybe, yeah, I get it. So we hope he's doing well. I really do, and I hope to have him on here. Teddy, you mentioned it. Any contact with Teddy? Everyone asked me about that.
I haven't talked to Teddy in a while. Last I knew about Teddy, he and his wife they had like a sandwich truck, like a whatever they're called. I can't even think of the word right now. Then I think he opened a restaurant, but I think since then he's closed it. But don't quote me on that. But I don't really know where Teddy has gone. Yeah. I hope he's doing well, though, him and Poppy.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to name some names. You just say what you want to say, all right? Will Murray.
Who?
Will Murray.
Oh, I love Will. Will's a good guy.
Jason Kaplan.
Huh?
Jason Kaplan.
I saw recently on Twitter they had put a thing up of Jason. He looks phenomenal. And I love his wife and I love his pets. And I follow them on all social media. And he has the cutest blind beagle, which just melts my heart that he would do that because I have a handicapped dog too. Yeah, I don't really have anything. I don't think there's anyone that you could bring up that I would really have something nasty to say about.
Ever, do you get the chance to talk to those people? I mean, do you keep in touch?
Not really. When I found out that Will had and the family had gotten COVID, I did reach out to him and we talked a little bit. I talk to him every once in a while on social media. Last time I was in New York was before COVID, and I did get to see everyone. We all went out to our local pub, and there's a dog again. We had some drinks, we caught up, but because of COVID, I haven't been back up. I talk more to the wives, a lot of the wives. Like I still talk to Richard Christie's wife a lot. I talk to High Pitch Mike a lot. I talk to Jim McClure's wife a lot. Richie Wilson I talked to, and Rachel, and Rob Martin, and Jackie, who was Scott's intern, and they fell in love and got married and have a baby and are living a great life. Gary, every once in a while on social media, but it's weird. Like, I'm just, like, I left and I left. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, it's funny that you said, because you left. I left, and I had a real hard time leaving the people. Like, I didn't want to do the job anymore, but I really loved the people. There's probably five of them were in my wedding, so it's like they were my. I have these. My wife says you have to start deleting some friends. You have too many. And I'm like, no, that I have this part of my life. I have these people, and I have these people. So I keep in touch with them. I was curious too. So you talked about when you left, but a lot of people talk about that time being a weird time for the show because of kind of the change that was happening, and people have seen Howard's YouTube video that was leaked where he says, "I want A-listers," and MARCI comes in. Did you get a sense it was a weird time for the show? A weird feeling of change when you, because it was kind of.
I mean, anyone who's going to tell you that it wasn't changing is full of shit. I mean, it was definitely changing, but I have to be honest, like, people can say what they want, and they could say Howard's not the same, he's sold out, he's this, he's that. His interviews have never been better. His kindness, I think, comes through, and I think that people are seeing him for who he is as opposed to what they think he is. And was it weird for me at first? Yes. Do I think in the end game it was a benefit and the show sounds better than ever? Yeah, I do. I mean, people can think what they want. Oh, we're not playing anal ring toss. This stripper's not doing this and this one's not doing that. Well, there's more to life than strippers and anal ring toss. Like, I'm interested in what these people have to say. And like I said before, like, he has a way of making people just open up and want to talk to him. So I think he's one of the best interviewers in the world. And anyone who says other is full of shit.
Totally well prepared. Was it tense around there though for everyone, including yourself? Because that's a weird, when something like that happens, it's got to be tense, and people are walking around scared about their jobs and everything. Well, how did you feel like a tenseness, and were you tense?
Listen, it was different. I mean, one day I was in my own office, the next day I was in Gary's office. Like, I remember my best friends. I spent the weekend at my best friend's out on Long Island. And that Sunday she had, I don't know, a bridal shower or something. So I stayed at the house and I was babysitting her kids while she was gone. And her husband, I don't know, was playing golf or something. And I come back to the city the next day. I go to work. I'm sitting in my office. She calls me and she's like, my sister died last night. She had a stroke, massive stroke. She died. MARCI comes walking in the office. So you have to be out of here by Wednesday. And I'm literally sitting here talking about somebody who had been in my life for 20 years passing away. And MARCI's just like, you got to be out by Wednesday. So I was like, what the fuck? Like, it was weird. But I really don't have anything to say about MARCI. I really think at the end of the day, she's been more of a benefit than people give her credit for.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's another contract, another 5 years. So Sirius seems to enjoy it. There must be subscribers. So it is working. And Howard's almost 70, right? I mean, he like you were saying, anal ring toss doesn't work when a 70-year-old's doing it.
No, it's gross with a 70-year-old. No, it's like watching my father with anal ring toss. I'm not interested. No.
Well, do you have favorite memories from there that you kind of think back at, things that are just, you go, wow, that was fun. Man, that was funny. That was good,
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I remember there were some days where I would sit in the office and things would go on and I would cackle. I would cackle. And I had a receiver right from the studio in my office. And like, there would be 30 minutes where you couldn't actually even get any work done because you were laughing so hard. I've met some great people. And it's funny, when I was preparing for this, I was like, who was your favorite person that ever came in? Cloris Leachman was the greatest thing, to actually talk to Cloris Leachman. And I didn't talk to her. She talked to me, and she was funny and she was sweet. It was awesome. Obviously, when we left K-Rock, that party was huge. And we went to the Hard Rock. I think it was no, it wasn't the Hard Rock. It was the one somewhere in the 50s. And it was the first time anyone asked me for my autograph, which was super weird, super creepy weird. And then obviously the birthday bash. And I remember Robert Downey Jr. came into, I had to work the green room. So all the celebrities before they came out to go onto the stage would come in there. And I mean, it was, Slash was in there and Jimmy Fallon was in there and Robert Downey Jr. and all these celebrities were just sitting in there watching him on the monitor. And I'm just standing there like, oh my God, And I think Robert Downey Jr. like accidentally bumped into me and he was so sweet and like, oh, I'm so sorry. And he's like, are you having a good time? And I was like, I just talked to Robert Downey Jr., my childhood sweetheart. There was just a lot of cool things. There were a lot of funny things. I even off air, we used to have beer pong tournaments. Those were always fun. We'd get an ante and you'd get $10 for unlimited pitchers and $10 would go in for the beer pong and we would rent out a bar for the day. We just had fun and it really was a great family atmosphere. And I do miss them all. And I really hope that each and every one of them are so awesome.
You get along with the Howard TV guys? Those guys are a little...
Actually, I was closer with the Howard TV guys than I was. My crew, my going away party was Doug Goodstein, Richie, Jim McClure, Richard Christie, JD, Sal, and all their wives. That was who I hung out with the most.
But 2014, you decide to leave. Tell us a little bit about just kind of that time. It was your decision, right?
It was my decision. It was actually, I left in 2014, but in 2013, I had started to look for a place to buy in New York. I was living in a 200 square foot studio for $1,600 a month. The apartment next to mine, a Chinese restaurant was renting, and literally every night the door would slam and open and slam and open and slam and slam and slam because the guy was coming to pick up the deliveries. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. So I started to have panic attacks about buying in New York. And I'm like, I don't want to do this. And I had read an article in the New York Post about how 14% of New York residents had relocated to the Charlotte area. There was a big job market, so on and so forth. So in September of 2013, I booked a flight for a weekend, got a hotel, came down. One of my old bosses, who I'm sure anyone who listens to the show knows, Harvey Leeds, he hooked me up with some friends that lived down here. They kind of showed me around. It turned out that iHeart was having a festival down here that weekend. And being that I worked in the music industry, a bunch of my friends were down. And I had the best weekend ever. So I came for the weekend. I got in touch with a realtor. 2 months later, I came back. I rented an apartment. And then through December, I kind of started to slowly get everything together. I had to get a car, which I hadn't had in over 10 years, things like that. And then I came back. I gave my notice. Everyone was kind of shocked. No one saw it coming. And then my lease was up at the end of the year, but the birthday bash was coming in. They knew they needed my help for the birthday bash because I was doing just a lot of the background stuff. So I stayed the extra month. I actually moved in to the apartment with two of the Takes team guys, one of them who's now MARCI's husband, Ben. So they hosted me for a month. I stayed it through and then packed up the car and left. That was it.
And it's so weird. Everybody loves the show, but when someone leaves, it's always like, what happened? Why'd they leave? Where'd they go? And no one says anything either. So it always becomes this shroud of conspiracy. Yeah. Tracey, what did she do? And was it mentioned on the show? Did it ever come up?
I don't think so. And I don't think that Howard's like that. He was very sweet when I left. We sat down in the studio together. We talked for a while. If I could have stayed at that job and left New York, I would have. But I was going 800 miles away. There was nothing that I could do. He was a wonderful guy to work for. I loved everybody that I worked with. But sometimes you just leave. And I don't think he likes to make something of it because there are so many, I hate to say it, jackasses out there that come up with their conclusions. They make drama out of it. And you can think what you want. You can say I got fired. You can do whatever you want. I know the truth. They know the truth. Anyone in my life knows the truth. I don't really care anymore. It's so past tense. You know what I mean?
But it's funny because, I have a whole list of questions, but this morning I thought about this and I thought, it's always odd to me that there is, because you guys all become characters. You become part of the show. When you're on that show, they feel like they know you. And so when you're gone and then nothing is said about it, and this happens all the time. Brent and Shuli and just go down the list. So then those guys have to go out and say, here's what happened. And then people are like, I don't believe you. It would just seem like it'd be easier for Howard if he just said, thanks to Tracey. Well, we had a great time with her. But it's so weird to me that doesn't happen.
I can't speak for him. I can't say what goes through his head. I would never do that anyway. I mean, he has his reasons, whatever they are, and I'm fine with it. Like I said, I don't care what people think. I don't think Shuli cares. I don't think Brent cares. It is what it is, Life goes on, the show goes on, whether we're part of it, whether we're not.
So you're happy. You sound happy. I said I want you to curse at me a little bit. You said you don't even do that anymore. But what are you doing now? Tell us a little bit about how things are going for you right now in 2021.
Oh, God. Well, when I first got down here, I got a job working for one of the radio shows at iHeart, which was totally weird because it was a female-based show. Like the audience was primarily female, which was so opposite of everything that I knew. And I was kind of doing the same thing down there. And then probably about 3 years in, their fan base had kind of started to just dissipate a little, not dissipate, but there were rumors they were going to add some stations, move some stations. We didn't really know what was going on. So they were trying to really work on their digital aspect. So they had switched me over to sales. And anyone who knows me knows that's not for me. I'm not going to sell. I'm not that girl. Like, I'm just not interested. So I let them pay out my contracts. And then I've been going to school. Actually, I'm going back for a degree in IT and cloud virtualization, which is kind of cool. But currently for work, I work at this company that I've only been there for a few months and I absolutely love it. It's a power company, but they build solar fields. They build electric charging stations. They build and repair cell towers. They build networks for companies. It's stuff to me that's so fascinating that I never thought I would get into. But the day that I went for the interview, I had been interviewing with them and I had been interviewing with a real estate company. And the guy who the real estate company was for, very well known down here, a very lucrative company. It was more money. It was 15 minutes from my house. This company pays a little bit less, is 45 minutes from my house, but I knew it was what I wanted to do. I just thought that the opportunities there were so cool and to see how these things work. And I love it. I made the right choice.
That's so cool. I don't ever really talk about what I do for the real world, but I'm a Scrum Master now. That's what, I don't know if you know that word, and I tell my friends and they're like, what the what? I'm like, trust me, it's perfect for me. I'm not going to go through it here, but being in broadcasting and then just totally disassociating and doing something totally different is fun because I see the end of my, work life. I can see retirement. I always say that. I'm like, I didn't see retirement where I was. And so now it's kind of fun. It's fun to be able to and when we had a pre-conversation with that's kind of what I talked about with these. It's like Tim Sabian, he loves what he's doing now. I guess Shuli loves what he's doing. It's fun to hear what you guys do after. But let me get back to how did you end up in the Howard Stern arena? How did you just get that job in the office manager job? How did it all come together? It's
funny. I can't remember what I did every day, but I remember when I got the job. So like I said, everyone knows, I'm sure, that listens to the show, the Leeds brothers, Harvey Leeds and Steve Leeds. And I had been working at Sony Music for Harvey in artist development. And at the time, Howard was getting ready to leave K-Rock and go over to Sirius, and they were looking for somebody that they were going to take with them to fill that role. So Harvey called Gary, and Steve Leeds already worked at Sirius, so he kind of had a conversation with Gary too, and they were bringing in a ton of people. And I remember going to K-Rock, and I had a meet with Howard's old assistant, Laura, and Gary, and I got there were people waiting. I left, there were people waiting. It was a revolving door of people coming in. And they were like, all right, we're probably going to make a decision in a week or so. We'll let you know. And I had been standing on the street in front of a venue getting ready for a Natasha Bedingfield showcase that we were putting together. And all of a sudden, Laura called me, and she's literally not even 24 hours later, and offered me the job, and that was it.
And that was at K-Rock or Sirius? K-Rock or Sirius?
Yeah.
It started at K-Rock?
I started at K-Rock. I was at K-Rock 2.5 months before we moved.
Okay. So then you got to move along with everybody else. What was that? What were those times like? Just kind of, because I think everybody there had to be sad at the K-Rock place, but then you move into a new place where they're just like balloons and confetti, I'm sure.
Well, it was weird because the setup that we had at K-Rock, where the studio was and the office with Will and Jason and Gary and the interns, that was on one side of the building, and my office was on the other side of the building. So it always made it very difficult for me. I didn't really spend a lot of time down there with them. They came to my office now and then, and I went down there, but I didn't really get a chance to bond with them, and I didn't really get a chance to see them interacting with other people from the station. It wasn't until we moved that I really got to know everybody and felt more like I was part of it. But it was also weird because when we got to Sirius, we were closed off from everybody else. You weren't allowed into the compound. You had to have a key card to get in. So at the time back then, I still smoked. So I was able to go outside and hang out with people, and we would go smoke cigarettes together. And that's how I got to really know most of the people at Sirius. But in the beginning, it was weird because you couldn't really meet with people because they couldn't come back there. So unless you were going out, no one was coming in. But it was great in the end.
And you worked with Howard pretty closely, right? You had a lot of like inner dealings, meetings and things, right? Or no?
Yeah, there were meetings. I did work with him closely, but it was weird because after the show, he would go into his office, he would do his thing for a little bit, and he would get up and leave. So I didn't have the time with him that everyone else did. I didn't go in during breaks. Like sometimes I did if I needed to give him a message or something like that. The most time I really ever spent with him, and I actually miss doing them once things all digital, is we used to do movie screenings. So every time a new movie would come out, the movie company would invite us to go to a private theater, and the whole crew could go. We would all sit and watch the movies, and I always had to meet him on the streets. And I remember one time we were seeing some movie in IMAX, and I had to meet him, and it was like 3 escalators up. And I swear to God, I think we were together maybe 3 minutes, and he knew my entire life story. I mean, and I don't know what it is about him, but he asks you a question and you legit just want to answer it. You want to tell him anything he wants to know. Like you melt into it. It's the weirdest thing I've ever seen in my life. But I would enjoy those little conversations with him and those times with him. He really is great. He's just a great guy.